My name is Anna, and I'm 39. By all accounts, I have a perfect life. I'm a partner at one of Chicago's top architectural firms. I live in a beautiful, minimalist condo overlooking the lake, and I am respected in my field. But my life isn't a structure, it's a facade. Behind the glass and steel of my success, there's a massive, gaping, 20-year-old hole. When I was 19, my daughter Sophie was stillborn. That one event broke my life in two. It was the fault line that split my world, and I've spent 2 decades carefully building a new, sterile, lonely life on the ruins. My family, the prestigious and perfect Whitmores, helped me move on. My mother, Eleanor, a woman who values appearances above all else, handled the unpleasantness with terrifying efficiency. My older brother Andrew, the golden boy heir to my father's real estate empire, and his perfect, icy wife, Olivia, were politely sympathetic. My father, the only one who ever really saw me, just faded, retreating into a quiet, sad fog of early-onset Alzheimer's. I've kept my distance, living 5 states away, visiting only for obligatory holidays, where I feel like a ghost in my own childhood home. But I came back 2 weeks ago, for my father's 70th birthday, and in a moment of quiet desperation, looking for a piece of my past, I found something. Hidden in the back of my mother's closet, in an old, forgotten hat box, I found a tiny, faded, baby blue hospital bracelet. The name on it was not Sophie. The name was baby girl Anna Whitmore. And the date was mine. But the most chilling part, the detail that has stopped my world from spinning, was a tiny handwritten notation on the back, in my mother's perfect script, NW7, CR. NW7 isn't a room number. It's a nursery ward. And CR isn't a medical term. It's the initials of my sister-in-law, Olivia. My baby didn't die. She was given away. And I'm starting to suspect that my niece, the brilliant 20-year-old girl they're parading around, the one who looks at me with a strange, familiar sadness, is closer to me than I ever could have imagined. They thought I was the broken, grieving daughter. They had no idea I'm a forensic architect. My job is to find the rot hidden beneath the perfect facade. And I'm about to tear this entire, beautiful, lying family down to the studs. If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, if you've ever been told a lie you felt in your gut was wrong, you're going to want to see this. This isn't just a family secret, it's a conspiracy. Hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments. What's the one secret you'd risk everything to uncover? To understand my family, you have to understand the Whitmore name. In Chicago, that name is a brand. It's etched onto the brass plaques of skyscrapers, it's whispered in the quiet old money halls of charity boards, and it's synonymous with the kind of effortless, generational wealth that feels both impenetrable and deeply, terrifyingly cold. My father, James Whitmore, built a real estate empire. My mother, Eleanor, built a social one. Together, they were a fortress. Their fortress required 2 things, a perfect heir and a perfect spare. My older brother, Andrew, was the heir. From birth, he was groomed to take over. He was handsome, charismatic, ruthless, and, in my father's eyes, flawless. He went to the right schools, joined the right clubs, and married the perfect woman, Olivia Reed. Olivia was, if possible, even more of a Whitmore than my mother. She came from old Boston money, was impeccably dressed, emotionally sterile, and fiercely ambitious. They were a perfect, terrifying power couple. And then, there was me. I was the spare. The artsy one. The sensitive one. The disappointment. I wasn't a problem, exactly. Just an afterthought. While Andrew was being groomed for the boardroom, I was left to my books and my sketches. I was quiet. I was observant. And I was, to my mother's eternal frustration, nothing like her. I didn't want to go to the debutante balls. I wanted to be in the library. I didn't want to marry well. I wanted to be something. I became an architect, a forensic architect, to be precise. A career my mother found baffling and slightly morbid. My job is to find out why buildings fail, to sift through the rubble of a collapse, and find the one, tiny, hidden structural flaw, the one lie in the blueprint that brought the whole thing down. The irony, I now realize, is staggering. The great, unfixable fault line of my life was drawn when I was 19. I was a sophomore at Northwestern, and I fell in love with my art history professor, a kind, brilliant, and completely unsuitable man named Ben. He was 30. He was wonderful. And he was the one mistake of my life. I got pregnant. When I told my parents, it wasn't a conversation, it was a crisis management meeting. My mother, Eleanor, took control with the terrifying, bloodless efficiency of a military general. "This will be handled," she said, her voice like ice. "This will not ruin us." She sent me away, to a private clinic in Switzerland, or so she told everyone. It was actually a discreet, high-end birthing center in a remote part of Northern California. I was isolated, alone, and terrified. Ben wasn't allowed to come. "He has no rights here, Anna," my mother informed me. And you will not ruin his career or your future with this entanglement. I spent 3 months there, a prisoner in a gilded cage, waiting. The birth itself was a blur of pain, confusion, and medication. When I woke up, my mother was by my bedside, her face a mask of tragic, practiced grief. "I'm so sorry, darling," she'd said, smoothing my hair. "The baby, she didn't make it. A stillbirth. The doctors, they said it was for the best. I didn't just lose a baby, I lost myself. A part of me died in that room. I came back to Chicago a ghost, hollowed out. My grief, a vast, silent, screaming emptiness that my family refused to acknowledge. We never spoke of it again. We must look forward, Anna," my mother commanded. I finished college, fled to Seattle, and built my new life. The life of the quiet daughter, the career woman, the one who never married, who never had children, who just worked. I buried myself in the failures of buildings, because it was less painful than focusing on my own. My relationship with my family became a thing of polite, sterile distance. And then, 2 years ago, my father's mind began to fail. Early onset Alzheimer's. The giant of my childhood, the man who had, in his own way, always tried to protect me, began to disappear. And as he faded, my mother's power became absolute. My brother Andrew, and his wife Olivia, were now the prince and princess regent, and I was just a distant, irrelevant relative. I came home for my father's 70th birthday. It was less a celebration, and more a showcasing. My mother had thrown a massive, lavish party at the family mansion in Lake Forest. It was a painful, performative event. My father, confused and frail, sat in a large armchair like a prop, while my mother and Andrew glided through the room, accepting condolences for his condition and compliments on their strength. I escaped the noise and went upstairs, to my old wing of the house. I hadn't been in my mother's rooms in years, but I was drawn there by a force I didn't understand. A desperate need to find something. A piece of the past that wasn't tainted. Her suite was, as always, immaculate, cold, and smelled faintly of expensive lilies. Her walk-in closet was the size of my first apartment, and in the back, on a high shelf, under a pile of cashmere throws, was an old, leather-striped hatbox. It was my grandmother's, the one my mother was never supposed to have, the one she'd always denied existed. My heart hammered. I pulled it down. Inside, it wasn't hats. It was my past, my old report cards, a lock of my hair from my first haircut, a box of my childhood diaries. My mother had been hoarding my life, storing it away like an archive she couldn't bring herself to destroy. And at the very bottom, beneath a copy of my college diploma, was a small, dusty, velvet ring box. My hands were shaking. I opened it. Inside, there was no ring, just a tiny, coiled, plastic hospital bracelet. It was pale blue. My breath caught. I uncurled it. The plastic was brittle with age. The tiny, typewritten card slid out. Baby girl, Anna Whitmore. And the date, April 17th, 20 years ago. I sank to the floor. The wind knocked out of me. Why would she keep this? Why would she keep a memento from the most traumatic day of her life? A day she had surgically excised from our family history. I was told the baby was a girl, Sophie, and that she was buried in an unmarked grave in California, to make it easier to move on. My mother had handled all the arrangements. My fingers fumbled with the tiny bracelet. It felt wrong. It was blue, not pink. Blue. I'd always been told it was a girl. A perfect little girl, my mother had said, her voice cracking. Too perfect for this world. Was that just another lie in a long list of them? Or was it just a hospital error? I turned the tiny plastic band over, and there, on the back, was the notation. Faint, in a nurse's hurried pen, but unmistakable. NW7. CR. My blood went cold. My brain, the analytical, forensic part of my brain, kicked in. NW7. That wasn't a room number. I'd worked in hospitals. That was a ward designation. NW. Newborn ward. 7. Bassinet 7. A baby who was stillborn would never be assigned a bassinet in the newborn ward. A stillborn baby goes to the morgue. A baby who was alive goes to the nursery. And CRI stared at the initials. My mind cycled through a dozen possibilities. Code red? C-section referral? No, that didn't make sense. CR. My sister-in-law. Olivia. Her maiden name was Olivia Reed. CRCR. Claire. My niece. Andrew and Olivia's daughter. My perfect niece. The 20-year-old, brilliant, beautiful, accomplished girl who was the other star of the Whitmore family. Her name was Claire. Claire Reed Whitmore. No, it was impossible. It was insane. It was a coincidence. A sick, horrifying coincidence. Claire. Claire Reed. I looked at the bracelet again. My baby. My son, apparently. Blue. A boy. But the initials, CR. I suddenly felt like I was going to be sick. This wasn't a memento. This wasn't a coincidence. This was a clue. My mother, in her obsessive, controlling need to archive everything, even her own sins, had kept the one piece of evidence that could unravel her entire world. And I had just found it. I stumbled out of that closet, out of that house, in a daze. I don't remember saying goodbye. I flew back to Seattle the next morning, my mind a roaring hive of impossible questions. The bracelet felt like a hot coal in my purse. A boy. NW7. A live baby. CR. For 2 days I was paralyzed. I sat in my quiet, minimalist condo, unable to work, unable to sleep. Was I going insane? Was I, as my mother had always hinted, too emotional, prone to fantasy? Was I a grieving mother, so broken by her loss that she was now manufacturing a 20-year-old conspiracy from a set of initials on a plastic band? On the 3rd day, the prosecutor in me woke up. Stop feeling, I told myself, my voice harsh in the silence. Start investigating. I was a forensic genealogist. I had access to databases the public didn't. I had skills that could unearth the dead. It was time to use them on my own family. I started with the hospital, St. Jude's Private Maternity Center, in a quiet, wealthy suburb of San Francisco. The place my mother had sent me. The place that specialized in discreet care. I ran a search. The hospital had been bought by a larger healthcare conglomerate 5 years ago. Their records, however, had been digitized, not destroyed. I still had a few contacts from my old PI days, back channels, ways of accessing records that weren't exactly legal. I made a call. I need a favor, I said to a man whose voice I knew, but whose name I never used. I need a birth record from St. Jude's. April 17th, 20 years ago. Mother's name, Anna Whitmore. I need to know everything. While I waited, I started a new file, a target package. On my own family, I built a timeline. I cross-referenced my mother's old credit card statements, which I'd had access to for years, as I'd been the one managing her accounts before she'd frozen me out, with my father's travel records. I looked for patterns, for anomalies. The first anomaly, my brother Andrew and his wife Olivia. Their miracle baby, Claire. I'd always been told the story. After years of heartbreaking infertility, they had adopted a baby girl through a private closed adoption in California. A miracle, my mother had called it, and the timing. Claire's adoption date was just 3 days after my stillbirth. It was too neat. It was too convenient. Another anomaly, my father's travel. In the 2 months leading up to my delivery, he had made 3 separate one-day trips. Not to San Francisco, where I was, but to Phoenix, Arizona. Why? And then, the biggest anomaly of all, Claire, my niece, the brilliant 20-year-old sophomore at Stanford. The one who was the apple of my mother's eye. The one who was, in every way, the daughter my mother had wished I had been. Beautiful, socially adept, ambitious. And the one who looked nothing like my brother. Andrew is a classic Whitmore. Tall, blonde, blue-eyed. Olivia is a fine-boned, aristocratic brunette. Claire, she was like me. She was like my side of the family. She had my dark, wavy hair. My real mother's, artistic hands. And she had Ben's eyes. My Ben. The art history professor. The man I had loved. My God. I pulled up Claire's Instagram profile. It was a perfect, curated feed of sorority events, study abroad trips, and smiling photos with her perfect family. So lucky to have the best parents and grandmother in the world. She'd captioned a photo of her with Andrew, Olivia, and my mother. I felt a wave of nausea so profound, I had to grip my desk. Was I looking at my own daughter, living the life I was never allowed to have, calling my sister-in-law Mom? My contact called back the next day. His voice was grim. "Okay, Anna," he said. This is a mess. You're not gonna like this. Just tell me," I said, my voice flat. "There was no stillbirth," he said. "The records are weird. They're sealed, but not just sealed. They're deep sealed. By a court order. But I gotta look at the intake summary. You delivered a healthy 7-pound, 4-ounce baby boy. A boy?" I had been so convinced. A boy? Yup, healthy as they come. APGAR scores of 9 and 9. He was discharged 48 hours later. Not to you. To who? I whispered. This is the weird part, he said. He was discharged to a Mr. and Mrs. Julian Hayes. The paperwork was signed by a Dr. Eris and co-signed by your mother, Eleanor Whitmore, as acting guardian. Julian Hayes. The name meant nothing. And the adoption? There was no adoption, Anna, not a legal one. The baby was transferred. It was a private transfer, authorized by your mother. And the court order sealing the records? It wasn't filed 20 years ago. It was filed 5 years ago by a high-powered law firm in Chicago. At the request of your brother, Andrew. Andrew had sealed the records. Why? So, I said, my mind struggling to rearrange the pieces. I had a son, a healthy boy. My mother, she gave him away to a Mr. and Mrs. Julian Hayes. And Claire isn't my daughter. The CR on the bracelet, it was a red herring. It must have been. It has to be. I felt a strange, dizzying mix of profound loss and confusion. Not so fast, my contact said. This is the other weird part. I ran a search on Julian Hayes. He doesn't exist. There is no one by that name with that birth date in the entire country. It's a fake identity, a ghost. But the address they listed on the discharge paperwork, it's a real place, a house in Phoenix, Arizona. Phoenix, the place my father had been flying to just before the birth. And, my contact continued, that house, it was sold 2 years ago. But for the 18 years prior to that, it was owned by, you ready for this? A Miss Sarah Reed. Reed, Olivia's maiden name. Sarah, Olivia's sister. Olivia's sister. Looks like it. So, to recap, your mom and dad were involved in faking a stillbirth. Your healthy baby boy was given, under a fake name, to your sister-in-law's sister, who lived in Phoenix. And then, 5 years ago, your brother sealed the records. This is a conspiracy, Anna. A whole family conspiracy. A son. I had a son. He was 20 years old. And he had been raised by my sister-in-law's sister. The revelation was so enormous, so life-altering, that I couldn't move for an entire day. My grief, which had been a dull, constant ache for 20 years, was suddenly fresh, raw, and full of a new, burning rage. They hadn't just lied about a death. They had stolen a life. My son's life. And mine. I had to find him. Sarah Reed, Phoenix, Arizona. I didn't call the PI this time. This was mine. I booked a flight to Phoenix. I told my firm I was taking an indefinite leave of absence. A family emergency, I'd said, the words tasting like poison. Landing in Phoenix felt like landing on the surface of the sun. The dry, baking heat was a stark contrast to the cool, damp green of Seattle. I rented a car and drove to the address my contact had given me, the house that had been owned by Sarah Reed. It was a nice, unremarkable, suburban ranch-style house in a quiet, manicured neighborhood. It was the picture of normal, middle-class life, a life my son had lived, while I was grieving his death. I didn't know what I was going to do. Knock on the door? Hi, I'm Anna. I'm looking for the 20-year-old boy you stole from me. I did what I do best. Surveillance. I parked down the street and I watched. For 2 days, I just watched. A new family lived there now. A young couple with toddlers. They weren't what I was looking for. I ran a search on Sarah Reed. She had sold the house 2 years ago and moved to Chicago. Back to the Whitmore mothership. Why? I ran a search on Julian Hayes, the fake name. There was no trace. It was a dead end. I was back to square one. I had a ghost. A 20-year-old boy raised in this house, who was now... where? I needed a new thread. I went back to the only other person in this twisted story. My niece, Claire. The CR on the bracelet. What if I wasn't wrong? What if the nurse was wrong? Or, what if both were true? Baby girl was on the bracelet I found. My contact had found records for a healthy baby boy. This was a contradiction. A contradiction meant a lie. A deliberate one. I called my contact back. I need you to look again, I said, my voice firm. The record you found, baby boy Collins. I think it's a plant. I think it's a fake record, created to hide the real one. I need to know what Northwest 7 means. And I need to know what CR means. He was quiet. Anna, that's a deep dive. You're asking me to hack the hospital's internal long-term archives. That's dangerous. I know, I said. And I will pay you whatever you ask. I need to know. I need the truth. It'll take a few days, he grumbled. And you owe me. Big time. While I waited, I flew back to Chicago. I couldn't just sit in a hotel. I needed to see them. I needed to be in the same city as the people who had done this to me. I drove to Lake Forest, to the family estate. I didn't go in. I just sat in my car, outside the massive stone gates, watching the house I grew up in. It looked smaller, colder. It wasn't a home. It was a fortress, built to keep secrets in and people like me out. I thought about my father, his Alzheimer's, his fear, his complicity. It's eating me alive, he'd said. He had known. He had lived with this lie, for 20 years. No wonder his mind had retreated. And my mother, Eleanor, the architect of this entire, monstrous thing. How had she done it? How had she looked me in the eye, year after year, and lied? And Andrew and Olivia, my brother and his perfect, icy wife. They adopted a baby, Claire, right after my stillbirth. A baby who looked just like me. A baby whose initials, CR, were on a bracelet in my mother's closet. A bracelet that said, Baby Girl, Anna Whitmore. My God. The boy, the baby boy Collins in the official records. He was the red herring. He was the fake, decoy baby. The planted file designed to send any investigator, like me, on a wild goose chase to Phoenix, looking for a ghost named Julian Hayes. It was a brilliant, intricate, multi-layered deception, but they had made one tiny, sentimental mistake. My mother. She couldn't bring herself to destroy the original, real bracelet. Her one, small, human flaw. My daughter was alive, and her name was Claire. And she was, right at this moment, probably in the library at Stanford, studying for exams, believing her Aunt Anna was just a quiet, distant, slightly sad woman who lived in Seattle. The rage that filled me was so profound, so absolute, I thought I might actually pass out. They hadn't just stolen my baby. They had kept her. They had kept her close. They had raised her, right in front of me, as their child, as my niece. They had let me play with her at holidays, let me buy her birthday present. This wasn't just a betrayal. This was a 20-year-long act of psychological torture. My phone rang. It was my contact. Anna, he said, his voice grim. You were right. The baby boy file was a plant. A very, very good one. But I got into the deep archive. The real transfer logs. St. Jude's didn't have a stillbirth for you, Anna. They had a live birth, healthy female. And they had a newborn Ward 7, just like you said. And the transfer of custody paperwork. The baby was released into the temporary guardianship of a Dr. Eris and Eleanor Whitmore. And the initials? I whispered. CR? I couldn't find anything with CR, but I found the nurse's log for that night. NW7. The log notes are, strange, baby girl Whitmore, Anna, transfer to guardian. Per Dr. A, file to be sealed. Awaiting transport to children's research. Not a name, a place. It was an internal code, Anna. The children's research wing was the discreet, private wing of the hospital where they handled sensitive adoptions. For high-profile clients, children's research, CR. It was all I needed. The case was closed. The evidence was in. My first primal instinct was to drive to Stanford, to find this girl, this Claire, and what? Scream, I'm your mother? Show her a plastic bracelet? Destroy her entire life? Her entire sense of self? In a single, selfish, explosive moment? No, that was what my mother would do. That was the Whitmore way. All scorched earth and collateral damage. I was my mother's daughter. My real mother. The artist. The one who had taught me about patience, about truth. I couldn't just confront Claire. She was an innocent. She was, in this, as much a victim as I was. The real culprits were Andrew, Olivia, and my mother Eleanor. They were the ones who had to be held accountable. But how? A public accusation? A lawsuit? They would deny it. They would close ranks. They would paint me, as they always had, as the unstable, emotional, grieving daughter, driven mad by her past. They had been perfecting this narrative for 20 years. No, I couldn't just tell the world the truth. I had to make them tell it. I flew back to Seattle, my mind working like a complex, multivariable equation. How do you get a fortress to destroy itself? You don't attack the walls from the outside. You find the traitor inside. And I knew exactly who the weak link was. My sister-in-law, Olivia. Olivia Reed Whitmore. I had always seen her as a cold, ambitious ice queen, a perfect partner for my brother Andrew. But she was also brittle. I'd seen her at family functions, her smile always a little too tight, her hand shaking just slightly as she reached for her second or third glass of wine before noon. She was a woman under immense, constant pressure to be the perfect Whitmore wife. And she had one single glaring vulnerability. She loved Claire, genuinely, fiercely, protectively. It was her one, redeeming, authentic human trait. And I was about to use it against her like a scalpel. I needed to get inside her head. I started digging. I ran a PI-level search on her. And I found something. A year before she and Andrew had adopted Claire, Olivia had checked into a high-end, discreet psychiatric facility in Connecticut for 6 weeks. The reason? severe depression and anxiety following multiple failed IVF treatments. She hadn't just been infertile. She had been desperate. So desperate, perhaps, that she would agree to a monstrous, illegal, and unethical solution offered by her powerful, manipulative mother-in-law. I had my leverage, and I had my stage. The annual Whitmore Foundation Charity Gala was in 3 weeks. It was my mother's, Eleanor's, personal Super Bowl. The one night a year she proved her absolute dominance over Chicago society. It was the perfect, public, high-stakes venue for a final confrontation. I called my mother. "Mom," I said, my voice sweet, submissive, and broken. I'm so sorry I've been so distant. I'm not doing well. I think I need my family. I'm coming home." For the gala. The relief and, yes, the triumph in her voice was nauseating. "Oh, Anna, darling," she said. "I'm so glad. I knew you'd come to your senses. Of course. We've missed you." The trap was set. Part 6. The accidental email. I arrived in Chicago a week before the gala, playing the part of the prodigal daughter. I was quiet, I was sad, I was apologetic. "I'm sorry, Mom," I'd whispered to Eleanor. I've been in a fog for so long. I'd like to try and be better, to be more involved." My mother was ecstatic. She had won. I, the last stubborn, independent piece of her family puzzle, had finally snapped, had finally crawled back, broken and needy. She and Andrew and Olivia were in the process of finalizing a massive new real estate deal, a new skyscraper that would be the crown jewel of the Crestwood Empire. They were on top of the world, and I was just a sad little ghost haunting the edges of their triumph. Or so they thought. While I was playing the role of the dutiful, grieving daughter by day, I was the forensic analyst by night. I had one goal: to find the one piece of evidence that tied Olivia directly to the adoption fraud. I had the hospital records, but I needed her. I needed her complicity. I was in my old bedroom, digging through my father's desk, which my mother had moved in there. "We just couldn't bear to see his empty study," she'd lied. And I found it. My dad, in his growing fog, had been a pack rat. He'd kept everything, including a stack of old paid invoices from a private investigator, one he had hired 5 years ago. My heart stopped. I read the invoices. He had hired a PI to investigate me, to check on my well-being in Seattle. The reports were heartbreakingly mundane. Daughter attended work, ate dinner alone, went to a bookstore. He had been watching me, trying to connect. But the last report, it was different. It wasn't about me. It was about Andrew. My father had hired the PI to look into a private adoption agency in California. Miracle Angels Adoptions, the same one my PI had found. My father knew. He had been investigating too. He had found the same fake agency, the same shell company. And then, the final document, a draft confidential memo, from my father to my mother and Andrew. It was dated 5 years ago, right after the PI's report. "Eleanor, Andrew, I know what you did. I know where Claire came from. This abomination, you will fix it. You will tell Anna the truth. Or I swear to God, I will. I will not go to my grave with this lie on my soul." He had known. He had confronted them. And they hadn't told me. They had sealed his records. They had buried his attempts. And 5 years later, he had started to develop Alzheimer's. How convenient. The pieces were all there. But I needed to get them in front of the one person who could break: Olivia. So I crafted the perfect weapon, a stray email. I accidentally forwarded an email chain to my mother, knowing she would immediately forward it to Olivia. The email was a fake, a carefully crafted conversation between me and my lawyer, Mr. Abernathy, who was, in reality, just a dummy email account I'd created. From Anna Whitmore to Abernathy Law Subject, forwarded message confidential family matter. Mr. Abernathy, as per our conversation, I'm forwarding you the initial findings from my father's PI. The evidence linking Andrew and Olivia to the fraudulent Miracle Angels Adoption Agency is conclusive. More upsetting, however, is this new, unconfirmed report from the hospital source. He claims the CR on the bracelet does not stand for Children's Research or Claire Reed. He claims it stands for Criminal Referral. He says the baby, my son, wasn't just given away. He was disposed of. He says he has proof that Olivia, desperate for a child, paid a private nurse to handle my baby, so that she and Andrew could adopt a different child, a healthy girl, Claire, without me ever knowing my son had been born alive. I'm horrified. If this is true, it's not just fraud. It's something else. Please, find out what criminal referral means. It was a monstrous, horrific lie. A calculated, venomous piece of psychological warfare, designed to do one thing: separate Olivia from the herd. I was painting her as a monster, a baby killer, a woman who had not just taken a baby, but disposed of one. I was framing her for a crime far, far worse than the one she had actually committed. And I was counting on my mother, in her panic, to show her the email. I hit send and waited. It took less than an hour. My phone rang. It was Olivia. She was at a charity lunch with my mother. I could hear the clinking of glasses in the background. Her voice was a low, tight, terrified whisper. Anna, I just saw your email. I think you've been misinformed. We need to talk. Alone. Without Eleanor. Gotcha. We met at a small neutral coffee shop in a different suburb. She arrived first, looking like a ghost. She was pale, her hands were shaking, and she hadn't bothered with her usual, perfect makeup. She looked broken. It's not true, she whispered before she had even sat down. That email. Criminal referral? Disposed of? Anna, my God, no. It wasn't like that. I would never. I'm not a monster. Then what was it, Olivia? I asked, my voice cold, my face a mask of stone. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you all lied. Now, you're going to tell me the truth. The real truth. Or I'm walking out of here, and I'm going to let my lawyer and the police find out what criminal referral means. And I will make sure they start with you. She flinched, as if I'd hit her. No police. Please. She was crying now. Real, messy tears. It was Eleanor. It was all Eleanor. From the beginning. And then, it all came pouring out. The story I had pieced together, but this time, from the other side. She and Andrew had been desperate for a child. The IVF had failed, again and again. She had been in a deep, dark depression, and Eleanor, my mother, had come to her with a solution. A gift. She told us your situation was a tragedy that could become a blessing, Olivia choked out. She said you were young, unstable, and that you wanted to give the baby up, but that you were too emotional to make the choice yourself. She said she would handle it. She would make it clean. She would tell you the baby was stillborn, and she would give the baby to us. And you just said yes? I whispered, the cold-blooded, transactional nature of it making me sick. We were desperate. She cried. I wanted a child so badly. And Eleanor, she can be so convincing. She said it was the perfect solution. The baby would stay in the family, be raised a Whitmore, with all the advantages, and you would be free to live your life, unburdened. She sold it to us, Anna. She said she was protecting you. So Claire. I breathed. Claire she's yours, Olivia whispered, her face crumpling. She's your baby girl. She's not adopted. She's yours. I've been lying to her, to everyone, for 20 years. I'm her aunt. But I love her, Anna. I know what I did was monstrous, but I am her mother. I raised her. Please, you can't take her from me. She was sobbing, her head in her hands. But I was frozen. She's yours. The words echoed in the small, quiet coffee shop. The baby boy file was a double lie. The CR was Claire. My daughter, my baby girl, who I had mourned for 20 years, was alive. And she was being raised by her. And the boy? I asked, my voice numb. The hospital records. My contact. He found a record for a baby boy Collins, given to a Julian Hayes in Phoenix. Olivia looked up, her face a mask of confusion. What? What boy? There was no boy. It was just her. Claire. Eleanor. She must have planted that. To send you on a wild goose chase, in case you ever started looking. Oh my God. She thought of everything. I sat back, the sheer, diabolical, multi-layered genius of my mother's conspiracy washing over me. She had created a fake stillbirth, a fake adoption, and a fake decoy baby with a fake decoy paper trail, all to cover her tracks. She wasn't just a manipulator. She was a grandmaster. Anna, Olivia pleaded, grabbing my hand across the table, her skin cold and clammy. What are you going to do? Please, don't tell Claire. Not yet. It would destroy her. She adores Eleanor. She thinks I'm her mother. Please, Anna, whatever you want. Money? The house? It's yours. Just don't ruin my daughter's life. My daughter. The words were on the tip of my tongue. I looked at this woman, this terrified, weeping, complicit woman. She was a thief, yes, but she was also right. She had raised her. And she had just confirmed everything. I need a recording of that, Olivia, I said, my voice like ice. A what? What you just told me, all of it. From the beginning. I need you to tell me, on the record, exactly what Eleanor did. What you did, what Andrew did. I need your full, detailed confession. Why? So you can send us to prison? She whispered, horrified. No, I said, so I can destroy my mother. She's the one who did this. You and Andrew. You're just collateral damage. But you will be collateral damage unless you help me. You will give me your full, recorded confession. And in exchange, I will consider how and when we tell Claire. I won't destroy her. But you will help me destroy Eleanor. Or I will take this email about criminal referrals, which, by the way, I completely fabricated, and I will give it to the police. And I will let them find out what really happened to my baby boy. And I will let them tear you apart, piece by piece. Your choice. She stared at me, trapped. She had allied herself with a monster, and she had just realized. So had I. Okay, she whispered, her voice trembling. Okay, I'll tell you everything. Just protect my daughter. Our daughter. I corrected her, my voice cold, and I hit record on my phone. The Whitmore Foundation Gala was my mother's masterpiece. It was a monument to her power, her influence, her image. The grand ballroom of the Art Institute was dripping with white orchids and crystal. Hundreds of Chicago's most powerful, wealthiest, and most influential people were there. A sea of tuxedos and designer gowns. My mother, Eleanor, was at the center of it all, a radiant, triumphant queen in a shimmering silver dress, accepting compliments on her, quote, humanitarian work. Andrew was by her side, the proud son, and Olivia, looking pale but perfectly composed, was on his arm. They looked perfect. The perfect family. I arrived late. I made an entrance. Not in a drab, sensitive dress. I wore a backless, blood-red, custom-made gown. I wore the diamond earrings my real grandmother, my father's mother, had left me. My hair, usually in a simple bun, was down, styled in sleek, severe waves. When I walked in, the room paused. People stared. I was not the quiet, mousy, artistic daughter they remembered. I was someone else. I saw my mother's eyes find me across the room. Her smile faltered, just for a second. I saw the look of pure, unadulterated terror in Olivia's eyes. And I saw Claire, my daughter. She was home from Stanford for the event, looking breathtakingly beautiful in a blue dress, laughing with a group of friends. Our eyes met across the room. She smiled at me, a polite, distant, aunt smile. It felt like a knife in my chest. Soon, I promised myself, soon, you'll know the truth. I didn't go to my assigned table. I went straight to the head table, where my mother was seated with the governor and a few billionaires. Mom, I said, my voice loud enough for the whole table to hear. You look radiant. I'm so glad I made it. I have a small contribution for the foundation. Anna, she said, her smile snapping back into place, though her eyes were wary. Darling, how dramatic you look. A contribution? How sweet. Yes, I said. I'd like to present it during your speech, if that's okay. I brought a little show and tell to honor the family. She was trapped. She couldn't say no in front of the governor. Why, of course, darling, she stammered. How wonderful. I smiled. It'll be a surprise. I spent the next hour mingling. But I wasn't just mingling. I was working. I found Janet Price, the Tribune's biggest society columnist. Janet, I whispered, you're going to want to have your recorder on during my mother's speech. There's a major family announcement happening. A huge story. I found the gala's AV technician. I slipped him a $100 bill. I have a very short video file on this USB drive. It's a tribute to my mother. When she calls me up on stage, I need you to play this file on the main screens. Not before. Exactly when I give you the signal. The tech, bored and underpaid, just nodded and pocketed the cash. Finally, the moment came. My mother, Eleanor, took the stage to a thunderous round of applause. She looked triumphant. She was at the peak of her power. Thank you, she gushed. It is my honor to welcome you all, to celebrate the work of this family. A family built on truth, integrity, and love. I almost gagged. And tonight, she continued, we have a special surprise. My daughter Anna, who has rejoined us tonight, has a special presentation. She smiled at me, a smile of pure, possessive victory. She thought I was about to make a tearful, fawning speech, proving to the world that her broken little bird had finally come home to roost. I walked onto the stage, my red dress cutting a slash through the soft, ambient lighting. I took the microphone. "Thank you, Mother," I said, my voice echoing through the silent, cavernous ballroom. "You're right, I do have a presentation. I've been archiving our family history, and I found a few lost items I'd like to share." I gave the signal to the AV tech. The massive screens on either side of the stage, which had been showing a tasteful looping video of the Foundation's good works, suddenly flickered to black. And then, the image of the tiny blue plastic hospital bracelet appeared, magnified 20 feet high. The name Baby Girl Anna Whitmore was as clear as day. The room gasped. I saw my mother's hand fly to her throat. "I was told," I said, my voice calm, "that my daughter was stillborn. A tragedy that, as my mother told me, was for the best. But my mother, as you know, is a collector, and she kept a souvenir." The screen changed. A high-resolution scan of the back of the bracelet. The initials CR were circled in red. "CR," I said. I was confused at first. But then, I found another piece of lost history. The screen changed again, this time to the audio file I'd recorded in the coffee shop. Olivia's voice, terrified and shaking, filled the ballroom. It was Eleanor. It was all Eleanor. From the beginning. She told us your situation was a tragedy that could become a blessing. She said she would handle it. She would tell you the baby was stillborn. And she would give the baby to us. The room was in chaos. People were standing up, shouting. My mother was clutching the podium, her face a mask of pure, white-hot horror. Andrew had his head in his hands. Olivia was sobbing. And Claire, my daughter, was standing near the front of the stage, her hand over her mouth, her eyes locked on my face, her world visibly, violently, shattering. But I wasn't finished. "My mother," I said, my voice cutting through the noise, "didn't just give my baby away. She faked a stillbirth, coerced her son and daughter-in-law into a criminal conspiracy, and then lied to me, her grieving 19-year-old daughter, for 20 years. All to protect the family name, all to manage a problem, all to maintain this." I gestured to the opulent, horrified room. "And finally," I said, "my father, the man who knew, the man who confronted them, and who, I believe, was silenced by them when his guilt became too inconvenient." I played the audio file from my father's drive. His weak, desperate voice. "I will not go to my grave with this lie on my soul." "He died a week after he recorded that," I said quietly. "A sudden heart attack. And my mother," I looked at her, my eyes locking on hers, "had him cremated the next day, before the autopsy results were even in." A woman in the front row screamed. "You," I said, pointing at my mother, "are a monster. And you," I pointed at Andrew and Olivia, "are cowards. You didn't just steal my daughter. You stole my life. You let me grieve a death that never happened." I turned to the stunned, horrified crowd. "Thank you all for coming to the Whitmore Foundation Gala. As the new, rightful head of this family, my first act is to announce that the foundation is being dissolved, effective immediately. All of its assets will be put into a new trust, a trust dedicated not to my mother's vanity, but to supporting victims of adoption fraud and obstetric malpractice." I then pulled a single, gold-plated ceremonial pen from the podium, the one they had used to sign in their high-value donors. "And Mom," I said, looking at the broken, trembling woman on the stage, "as for my inheritance, as for my place in this family," I dropped the pen into a glass of water, watching the ink bleed out. "You can keep it." I dropped the microphone. It hit the stage with a loud, final thud. And I walked, in my blood-red dress, through the silent, parting sea of Chicago's elite. And I never, ever looked back. The fallout was instantaneous. It was, as my old boss would have said, a full-scale detonation. The gala didn't just end. It imploded. By the time I had reached the hotel lobby, the first, frantic tweets were already going viral. #WhitmoreGala. #BabyThief. #Galagate. My mother's perfectly crafted world, her decades of social climbing, her pristine reputation, all of it was incinerated in under 10 minutes. I didn't stick around to watch the fire. I went straight to the airport and got on the first flight back to Seattle. My phone turned off. I had delivered my closing argument. The verdict was now up to the world, and the world was brutal. When I landed, my phone exploded. Hundreds of texts, dozens of voicemails. My name was the #1 trend on Twitter. The video of my speech, filmed by at least 50 different cell phones, was everywhere. The Gala of the Damned one gossip site called it. The legal and financial repercussions were swift. The board of Crestwood Holdings, horrified by the public scandal and the implication of foul play in my father's death, which, legally, I had never actually accused them of, convened an emergency meeting. They immediately launched a full, internal investigation. Andrew and Olivia were suspended, then fired. The story of their adoption, now exposed as a criminal conspiracy, made them social pariahs. They were, I heard, in the process of a very, very bitter divorce. Olivia, in a desperate attempt to save herself, had turned state's witness, agreeing to testify against both Andrew and Eleanor in exchange for immunity. My mother, Eleanor, was the one who truly lost everything. The DA's office, prompted by the public explosion and my father's lost evidence, opened a new investigation into both the original fraud and the circumstances surrounding my father's death. She was arrested. The combination of Olivia's testimony and the evidence I had leaked was overwhelming. She was charged with conspiracy, fraud, and a litany of other crimes. The heart attack, it turned out, was a heart attack, but one that had been brought on by a massive, deliberate, unprescribed overdose of his blood pressure medication. It was, the coroner ruled, death by medical negligence at the hands of a caregiver. It was murder, in all but name. My mother, the Queen of Chicago society, is now serving a 20-to-life sentence in a state prison. She lost her house, her money, her reputation, her freedom, and her son. And she lost her granddaughter. For 6 months after the gala, I heard nothing from Claire. I had, in one night, destroyed her entire life. I had told her, in the most brutal, public way imaginable, that her mother was her aunt, her father was her uncle, her aunt was her real mother, and her sainted grandmother was a monster who had stolen her at birth. I had given her the truth, but I had also given her an anchor of trauma that I feared would drown her. I sent her a single letter, a week after the gala, to a post office box I had set up for her. I told her I was in Seattle. I told her I would not pressure her, I would not push, but that my door and my heart were open, and that I would wait, for as long as it took. The text came on a rainy Tuesday in March. A simple 3-word message from an unknown number. I'm in Seattle. My heart stopped. I texted back, my hands shaking. Where? The coffee shop on your corner, the one with the green awning. I ran. I didn't grab a coat. I ran the 3 blocks in the cold, misty rain. I burst through the door of the coffee shop, my hair dripping, my chest heaving. And there she was, sitting at a small table in the back, a backpack at her feet, looking small and lost, and exactly like my mother, my real mother. We just stared at each other for a long, silent, impossible moment. Hi, she said finally, her voice small. Hi, I whispered. I changed my name, she said, as if that were the most important thing. I'm not Claire anymore. I'm Sophie. My real name. The one you gave me. I started to cry. Not the cold, angry tears of my old life, but real hot, messy tears. I sat down across from her. Sophie, I said, the name feeling strange and perfect on my tongue. I am so sorry. For how you found out. It was a monstrous thing to do. I was just so angry. She looked at me, her eyes, my eyes, clear and steady. I'm not, she said. You're not angry? Oh, I'm angry, she said, a small, bitter laugh escaping her. I'm in so much therapy. My entire life, everything. It was all a lie. I haven't spoken to them since that night. But I'm not angry at you. I watched the video of your speech. The full one, the one with the audio files. I get it. You were a victim, just like me. You fought back. With a PowerPoint, which is, I have to admit, kind of badass. I let out a shaky laugh. So, what now? She took a deep breath. Now, I don't know. I left Stanford. I can't be a Whitmore anymore. The name, it feels dirty. I'm staying with a friend. I'm trying to figure out who I am, if I'm not her. So, I said, my heart aching for this brilliant, broken 20-year-old girl who was my daughter. While you're figuring it out, my condo has a spare bedroom. It's not much, but it's quiet, and it's real, and it's yours, if you want it. No pressure. Just as a roommate, or whatever. Sophie looked at me. A long, searching look. And for the first time, a small, real, trembling smile touched her lips. "Okay," she said. "Yeah, okay. That sounds nice." It's been a year. Our life is a work in progress. It's not a fairy tale. It's not easy. Rebuilding a 20-year-old relationship from scratch is hard. There are days when the silence between us is heavy, when the ghosts of our past, the lies, the betrayals, the lost time, feel like a physical weight in the room. There are days when she looks at me, and I know she's not seeing me. She's seeing the woman who blew up her entire world in one night. And there are days when I look at her, and I don't see my daughter. I see a stranger who was raised by my enemies. But it's getting better. Sophie, or Soph, as I call her now, is incredible. She's a fighter. She is, I've learned, all the things I am. She's resilient, she's smart, and she has a core of steel. She's re-enrolled in college, here in Seattle, at the University of Washington. She's not studying business, like Andrew and Olivia wanted. She's studying art history, like Ben, like me. And she's mine. We're finding our rhythm. We have movie nights. We argue about whose turn it is to take out the recycling. I'm teaching her how to cook, how to really cook, my real mother's recipes, from a stained, handwritten cookbook I'd kept hidden for years. Last week, I took her to the small, overgrown cemetery where my mother, her real grandmother, Elena, is buried. I had never been back, not once. It was too painful. But I took her. We stood there, in the quiet, dappled sunlight, in front of the simple headstone. "This," I said, my voice thick, "is where you get your talent from." Her name was Elena, and she was magic. Sophie didn't cry. She just reached out and traced the name on the stone. "Tell me about her," she said. So I did. I sat there, in the quiet, peaceful cemetery, and I told my daughter the truth. The real truth. Not the story of the fraud, and the lies, and the pain, but the story of her grandmother. The story of her. Our story. I didn't get my 20 years back. I will always, always mourn that stolen time. I will always, on some level, be that broken 19-year-old girl, waking up in an empty, sterile room. But the hole, the gaping 20-year-old hole in my life, it's not empty anymore. It's been filled. It's been filled by this smart, funny, complicated, and absolutely infuriating young woman, who is currently, as I speak, in my kitchen, burning toast. My name is Anna. I'm 41. I'm a forensic architect, a bookstore owner, and a part-time professor of art history. And I am, for the first time in my entire goddamn life, a mother. And that is the only truth that matters.